Hello my dear friends, welcome to my channel. This is Ritu and we meet again with a new recipe. I'm running you through the ingredients. This is 5 cups of all-purpose flour, PPF or maida. Then for each cup of flour I have 1 tablespoon of yogurt, thick yogurt. And then I have 1 cup of warm milk. For each cup of all-purpose flour, I have 1 tablespoon of olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. And now for the yeast is generally for 2.5 cups I put 1 teaspoon of yeast. So it should go like 2 teaspoons of yeast in the whole thing. But with my experience, I've realized that under experience, and we learn through our experiences and mistakes and all that. So for 2.5 cup of all-purpose flour or any flour you are using, I'm adding half of the yeast and half of the baking powder. It is not only yeast. I'm adding half baking powder and a half of the yeast. So for 2 teaspoons of yeast, I have 1 teaspoon of yeast and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And then I have salt, 2 teaspoons, and around 4 teaspoons of sugar. I've added the olive oil to the flour. Now for me, I'm just using PPF or all-purpose flour, but you can substitute it with half of wheat flour and the all-purpose flour, or total wheat flour, or in ratio also you can change the ratio 2:1 or 2:3. So that all depends on you, how healthy you want it to be. But I usually make it half wheat flour and half the white flour. But as for today, I'm not doing that. Now I've added the oil, I'm adding the yeast, the baking powder, and the sugar. This is the instant yeast. And I have salt left over as yet, but that I will add after I mix all the oil into the flour, and it should will be resembling some very fine breadcrumbs, and that is, I think, one of the most important step in bread baking. Any bread that the flour and the oil should mix very properly. I did hear on a show that there's a chef and he was talking about his grandmother, and he says that my grandmother would watch a half an hour show and she'd slowly keep on sitting and rubbing the flour and the oil together, and that's how important it is. Don't take maybe half an hour, but yes, take enough ample time to mix it together. This is a very important step. So here it is, the mixed, all of the ingredient mixed, and now I'm adding the salt. The next step is going to be adding the yogurt, and it will be good if it's at room temperature, but doesn't matter, because later on we are going to add the warm milk and then water as required. I've mixed the yogurt very thoroughly, and now I'll be adding the milk, and later on water as required. Still in the process of kneading the dough. At this stage, I've added 2 tablespoons more of olive oil just to bring the whole thing together. So now the dough has come all together. It is maybe not looking so smooth, but this is ready for the first proofing. I'm going to cover it with a plate. You can do it with a cling film or anything, whatever, if you have a container which has a lid, so good enough. But it should have space to rise. And now I'll keep it at a place which is generally, because we live in a warm climate, but somewhere where it's not windy and the dough goes dry. So yes, now it is going to rest for 2 hours. And this is the first proof. So this has been resting for 2 hours, and this is what it looks like at the moment. This is the first proofing. So this is the first proofing, and now we just bring the dough around together. Though it is fairly very easy recipe, but the proofing is very important, and then it is something which takes time. So this is not a 5 minutes recipe. I'm going to bake it in the evening, and I've started somewhere around 10:30, 11 in the morning. And once I bring it together, then again I'm going to let it rest for another hour or so. It's been resting. The first proofing was 2 hours, and I'll be taking around that much time, 1 hour, 1.5 hours. Okay, now this is the second proofing, and you can see the dough is almost up till the top of the bowl. First thing is that we are living in a very hot place. Second thing is, in my recipe I have half the yeast, and I've added half of the rest I've substituted with the baking powder. So this is the second time second proofing. I'm puncturing the dough, and then I leave it again. This is almost like maybe 1.5 hours since I did the last time. And after that, the third proofing, I let it go into the fridge, where I don't want it to go sour. And another thing we will be doing then is like stretching the dough a bit. This is also another very important step, so that it becomes quite elastic. This is the third proofing, and after the second one, if weather permits, if it's very hot, then put it in the fridge, otherwise let it sit out on the counter. So this is the third proofing now, and I'm just bringing the dough together. See, this dough, it has to be a bit, not a very stiff dough. It has to be a bit runny, and sometimes as runny as you can pour it from one dish to another. So here we have the baking tray, and I have some regular vegetable oil on it, and I'm just greasing the tray with this oil. And I'll dust it with some flour. And with some olive oil, I'm going to flatten it, spread it out. So I have spread the dough in a greased and flour dusted baking tray, and I now will let it sit because it was sitting in the fridge. It's a bit cold also, so let it come to room temperature. Secondly, it should rise also, so we meet again after it rises, and that will again take another 1 hour. Now this dough in the baking tray, greased baking tray, has been sitting for maybe half an hour, 45 minutes. Now this is what you do for the focaccia. The oil might seem like a lot, but it's sitting on top, so you know it's maybe a teaspoon for each cup of flour, tablespoon. Okay, I'm going to puncture it once more. And these treats are to be enjoyed with friends and family. And I hope you like this recipe. Focaccia can be topped with olives, chopped olive, green olive, and with garlic, onions, cherry tomatoes, or basil, almost anything which takes your fancy, even some cheese. But today I'm just doing a herb one, so I've sprinkled it with some mixed herbs. And now this goes into a preheated oven at 200 degrees Celsius, and it'll take around 35 to 45 minutes to bake. This is the final product, and I'm just cutting a wedge out of it. So here's the final product. All our efforts. Just the trick is in the proofing of the dough, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed it. Bye for now. Take care.